there are a lot of horror stories and extreme stories about ayahuasca out on the internet, out in the media, and that caused a lot of fear for people. One about, hey, will I go crazy? Will I be worse after than I was before? Will I end up in a psychosis? Will I have a bad trip? And this video is about that. Also, real life stories about bad trips, what is a bad trip, and how to avoid them. So first we have to talk about what is a bad trip. And very clearly, a bad trip would be, for example, sexual abuse at a retreat, or even worse, at a ceremony. And this actually happens. And I was shocked to hear about it when I first heard about it as well, because that was so not on my radar screen. And this happens most likely in the jungle, and of course also to solo female travelers. So just be extra cautious about that if you're a female solo traveler in the Amazon. And also if you have history with sexual abuse, it's also something that you should pay special attention to what place you're going to. Another example of a bad trip would be if there's some long-lasting health consequences because of an ayahuasca ceremony. And that would happen if there's some medical conditions that contradict ayahuasca, whether it's certain heart disease, respiratory disease, but also mental disorders, for example, schizophrenia. Also, bipolar disorder is a difficult one as well. So in those cases, it's better to not drink ayahuasca. I also have a friend who has bipolar disorder, and he drinks ayahuasca, and it's been very beneficial to him. Also, bipolar disorder is a lot of times falsely diagnosed as ADHD combined with anxiety. But again, this is like a very delicate topic, and be very careful with it. So if you have any of those mental conditions, also it's better to not drink ayahuasca. And then there's also certain medications that contradict ayahuasca, and of course also hard drugs, cocaine, all the crazy stuff which is out there. So you have to make sure that you prepare and you don't have those medical conditions that contradict ayahuasca. The likelihood of a bad trip is also a lot higher with non-trained facilitators. And there's a story in Hungary where a person left the ceremony space, and she had a feeling that she was being chased by some type of spirits, some type of demons, whatever it was, and was walking down the road, also ended up breaking her hand, all that kind of stuff. So, of course, you want to go to a place where people take care of you. You also want to stay at the ceremony place, and that has, of course, bad news, because that's what's going to be broadcasted. Hey, somebody joins a ayahuasca ceremony, then breaks their hand, is being chased by an evil spirit, and ends up at the side of the road, whatever. So, make sure you drink with experienced facilitators. And another aspect is if you drink by yourself. And that also applies if you have experience. So, of course, if you have no experience, don't do it. Because you are opening yourself up, and you want to be safe, and you want to have somebody with you who knows how to navigate that space. But also, if you have experience with ayahuasca, still do it with somebody who's experienced in facilitating. And for example, there was a situation in Mocoa where somebody who has been drinking for quite a while drank ayahuasca at Fin del Mundo. This is a waterfall, 80-meter waterfall, and he ended up jumping off. And of course, it's horrible, bad trip. And you don't want that to happen, but then of course also don't drink by yourself. But I also want to talk about what is not a bad trip. And that's if you have a difficult time in a ceremony. It's when you see things which are scary. And we had an example where we did a private ceremony, and there was a couple, and the guy was going through some things, and after the ceremony the next day, she was also talking with his girlfriend, and she, that sounds like a horrible trip, you had a bad trip. And then after we were talking with them, and he was sharing, but very calmly, how he had a bad trip, and we were listening. I was like, this is not a bad trip. Like you became aware of certain things in your life. He was also able to transform certain things in that ceremony as well. And it was just something that was in his subconscious that came up that he had to deal with, and he could also transform. And this is also where you have to be very careful who you share your experience with, and that they don't put their negative experience or their viewpoint onto your experience and making it different than what it was. Also, we asked him what he learned from the ceremony, how he will change certain aspects of his life, and they were all positive. So that was even an example how somebody having a powerful transformational ceremony can be put into a bad trip by somebody else's viewpoint on the whole experience. And personally, I also had very challenging ceremonies in my life. Ceremonies where even after the ceremony I felt shaken. I was rattled up, having nightmares for multiple days. But in the end, I needed that experience at that time. I needed to be shaken in that moment because certain things were not going well in my life, and I needed to become aware of that. So how can you avoid having a bad trip? The first thing is drink ayahuasca at a reputable place, or a place that has been recommended to you, preferably by multiple people. Another important aspect to avoid a bad trip is to have respect, to have humility in your heart when approaching ayahuasca. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you have to have your whole life figured out. But know what you're doing there. Know that you're about to look into your subconscious. Take a look at what's really going on and have that open heart, that willingness to heal, to change, going into a ceremony. And that's going to help you prepare with the diet, with the mental preparation as well. Check out the video for that as well. And when you have that respect and humility going into ayahuasca, you'll be good. And there I also want to talk about the myth where people say like, hey, I'm in such a bad place. I'm afraid to drink ayahuasca. I can't drink ayahuasca because I'm in a bad place. And I understand that, because it can be very scary to go into an altered state of consciousness when you know that what you will see will be very scary. However, in most cases, those are also the people who need ayahuasca the most. And a lot of times they think, hey, I will get a huge slap from ayahuasca. It's going to be a horrible experience, but I have to go through it. But in most cases, it's exactly the opposite, because ayahuasca knows what you need at that moment. And so much more times, it's not the slap that we need, it's the love that we need. So in a lot of cases, ayahuasca comes and hugs you and shows you in a very loving way on things that you can improve in your life. But also if you have that respect in the way you approach the ceremony. So this ties into the next point about having an intention. And check out the video, Are You Ready for Ayahuasca? Because you don't want it to be a recreational thing. Ayahuasca is exactly the opposite of a recreational activity. So have a strong intention, know why you're drinking it, and you will be fine as well. Also, having trust and surrendering is going to make your ceremony so much more pleasant. So instead of resisting the things that come up, allow them to come up. Surrender into them, and you will have a lot better experience. So to summarize, if you have the humility in your heart, the respect when approaching ayahuasca, if you prepare mentally your body as well, if all the medical lists are also checked off, if you go to a place where you know there are good people, you will be fine and you will have a transformational experience, and it's going to be amazing. And I wish you the best on this journey. So just be careful with the recreational use, about the non-respect, about going to places which are a little bit shady, about doing it by yourself, doing it with non-trained facilitators. So I hope this video gave you the perspective that it's very important to be careful, to be mindful when drinking ayahuasca. But if you are, I promise you're gonna have an amazing transformation. And also the transformation might be more difficult than you initially thought it would be. It might also be very loving and amazing, but it will show you the things you need to see, and I wish you the best on this journey. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments section. Like this video so more people get access to this type of information, and I will see you in the next video.